welcome to Money, 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 your weekly personal finance date with me, Surabhi Upadhyay. How much does it cost to transact? It's a question that leaves many consumers confused in today's fast-changing financial services world, from revised banking transaction charges to ATM usage to the cost involved every time you swipe your card. It can get a bit complex out there as India undergoes the big digital payment change. So we thought of getting you some clarity and some perspective from the country's largest bank as well as one of the biggest global payments giants. Let me welcome on the show this week Mr Rajnish Kumar, MD at State Bank of India, and Amitabh Tiwari, Vice President, South Asia, MasterCard. Gentlemen, great to have you both on Money, Money, Money. Thank you so much for taking out the time. Now, before we get started, here's just a quick roundup of some of the transaction charges being levied by most banks at present. This is just a sampling. It's by no means an exhaustive list. Now, starting April 1 this year, State Bank of India set limits on the minimum monthly average balance you need to maintain in order to avoid a penalty. Now, the MAB, as it's called, has been kept at 5,000 rupees for metro customers, 3,000 rupees for urban customers, 2,000 rupees for semi-urban and 1,000 rupees for rural customers, respectively. The penalty for not maintaining this balance ranges from 20 rupees to 100 rupees. Now, different banks have different norms for the minimum balance. The penalty, for instance, in the case of ICICI Bank, ranges from 50 rupees to as high as 450 rupees per month. The same at HDFC Bank ranges from 150 to 600 rupees. Now, this is just the minimum balance math we're talking about. There are, of course, a plethora of other charges. Most banks have also gone back to charging every time you're using another bank's ATM. There are also charges being levied when you are withdrawing or depositing cash at the bank branch itself. And then, of course, there are the multiple other levies, from the standing instructions you may want to give your bank to the inquiries that you might have with respect to your own bank records, old bank records, to something as simple as photo attestation. So there is a price and there is a charge for everything. In fact, let me now bring in my colleague Ritu Singh, who's joining in to quickly give us a roundup of all the different levies at play.
Thank you very much for that, Surabhi. Let's look at some of the basic charges that are levied on customers for banking services. First, of course, is the minimum balance that banks require to maintain in your account per month. For State Bank of India, for instance, I'm talking about the metros only here. It's about 5,000 rupees for ICICI Bank. It's 10,000. Similarly, for HDFC Bank and Axis Bank, also it's 10,000 rupees per month. If you do not maintain this minimum monthly average balance, the penalties could range anywhere between 5 rupees to 450 rupees to 600 rupees per month, depending on which bank you're transacting with. As far as cash handling transactions are concerned, which means any amount that you withdraw or deposit with the bank, it of course is not free of cost. State Bank of India recently introduced these charges. You get 3 free transactions per month, after which there's a charge of 50 rupees per transaction on every consequent transaction. ICICI Bank and HDFC Bank offer both 4 free transactions per month, after which ICICI Bank charges 5 rupees per 1,000 rupee transacted and HDFC Bank charges 150 rupee per transaction. This is, of course, exclusive of any taxes whatsoever. ATM transaction, now this is something that all of us are very closely concerned with. Let's look at State Bank of India. It offers 5 free transactions in metros in SBI ATMs and 3 for non-SBI ATMs, after which there is a fee of 20 rupees per transaction that you make on any ATM. ICICI Bank, similarly, in ICICI Bank ATMs, offers 5 free transactions and a 20 rupee charge for every transaction thereafter. For non-ICICI Bank ATMs, there's 3 free transactions in metros and then charges thereafter. HDFC Bank, similarly, 5 free transactions and then a 20 rupee fee for every transaction thereafter. And lastly, let's look at some of the SMS banking alerts that you get on your phone every time you make a transaction. Well, no, they're not really free, of course. It's a minimum 5 rupee per month charge as far as Axis Bank is concerned, and some of the other large banks like State Bank of India and HDFC Bank charge anywhere between 15 rupees per quarter or thereabouts for these services that they offer. So if you look at the whole host of services, there is a charge involved for every services, and sometimes the customers may not even be aware of what they're paying.
Okay, so let me open this conversation with the banker, of course, Mr. Kumar. Now, let me direct this at you. Is this the new normal that consumers will have to get used for paying for almost everything that the bank is offering them?
No, this is not the new norm. This was the existing norm. The service charges have been in existence for quite some time for various types of services which banks provide. The only new element which is also, I should not call it new, because till 2012 there was a requirement for average balance and charges were levied, and then for 2 years it was discontinued and again permitted by Reserve Bank of India in November 14, and of course we did not implement the change in November 14, and we have now reintroduced the requirement of monthly average balance. The charges are approved by the board of the bank. Various cost benefit analysis are done and costing is done. Just to give you an example, about Reserve Bank of India permits 3 ATM transactions on other bank ATMs in metro areas and 5 transactions in the rural and semi-urban areas. So what does it cost me? The moment someone, a state bank debit card holder, and there are almost 27 crore of them, when they swipe their card at one of the ATMs and withdraws money, straight away I have to pay the bank 15 rupees plus service tax. That is the rate. That is a straight cash outgo, right? And if there is no balance in the account for the continuous period, so what I am committing is that in metro areas straight away 45 rupees per month, and in a rural semi-urban area 75 rupees per month outgo of cash. And just to give you an idea, almost 14 to 1500 crore per annum, that is what we pay to other banks on account of usage of debit card on other bank ATM. This is just an example. Similarly, for maintaining the accounts, IT systems, KYC, guidelines, seeding of accounts. So it is a very sort of labor intensive, though the self-service mode is gaining currency, but still the percentage is very low. And somewhere, at least, if not the full cost, a partial cost has to be recovered from the customers. I may also mention that the bank or no bank in a competitive environment in which we are today in our country would do anything where it loses its competitive advantage. So
sir, allow me to come in over there specifically with respect to ATM charges. And again, I just want to quote before viewers the facts as they stand right now. This is the case of ICICI Bank, and I'm reading from their fact sheet. For transactions at ICICI Bank's own ATMs, first 5 transactions are free. Thereafter, 20 rupees is the levy per transaction, per financial transaction, and 8.5 rupees is the levy for a non-financial transaction that you might do at ATMs. Now, this is with respect to ICICI Bank, sir. Just to get clarity, at State Bank of India, for customers who are using SBI ATMs, is there a plan, afoot perhaps to start levying charges beyond a certain number of transactions, or are you already doing that?
So there are, as I was coming to that there are number of free transactions on state bank ATMs beyond what is provided by regulation. And if you look at the number of free transactions, I think a customer should not or is not likely to do the number of free transactions which are currently being permitted. And we provide the flexibility also, in terms of like branch to ATM. If someone has not done any transaction in the branch, free transaction, they can use it at ATM. So it is some sort of a package, something guided by the regulation and something guided by our own cost considerations, and which is linked to the average balance in the account.
All right, we need to take a quick break on that note, but this conversation continues on the other side. And of course, we'll also get you some perspective on cards when you're using, whether your debit or credit cards. What are the charges at play? Are these charges going to increase, decrease? What's it looking like in financial year 2018? Back on the other side. Welcome back here with Money, Money, Money. And this week, we're debating the levy of a lot of charges on transactions that you're conducting, whether it's at your bank branch, at your bank's ATM, another bank's ATM, or maybe when you're swiping that piece of plastic. Let me get Amitabh into the conversation as well. Amitabh, of course, MasterCard is obviously responsible for a huge number of transactions that are happening in this country. I wanted to get your opening thoughts first up. After demonetization, there, of course, was a pickup. But then I also heard from some quarters that there's now been a bit of a plateauing and a bit of a lull in digital payments and digital transactions. How do you read the landscape, and your thoughts on some of the comments that Mr. Kumar was making there from a banker's perspective?
Right. So, Surabhi, you're absolutely right. After demonetization, when the money kind of went out of the system and there was no currency available to transact, transactions did see a spurt. They grew, in fact, more than 300% for debit cards. The growth was probably in the 100% range for credit cards as well, and we've seen growth reported by media and other sources for wallets and other payment types as well. As the money circulation came back into the system, customers probably fell back to old habits, and this growth rate has come down. But the good thing, the significant thing, is that it's now stabilizing at a level which is higher than what used to exist pre-demonetization. The important thing to note here also is that...
How much higher? Is there a sense that you have?
Well, we need to still see where it finally finds its level, but 100% would be a good guess.
So 100% increase in digital payments above where we were before the 8th of November. 16.
For debit cards.
For debit cards.
Okay. But then again, there are seasonalities and cyclic trends, etc. So you can't really compare, let's say, an October with a March or an April. So those kind of factors are there. But what I'm trying to say directionally is that there is growth, and it's stabilizing at a level higher than where it was pre-demonetization. India took about 2 decades to reach 1.5 million terminals or merchant points, and now it stands at 2.2 million, and all this has been done in the last 5-6 months.
Let me also bring in Mr. Kumar into the conversation. And sir, this is a very simple layman question. The fact that, there are more stringent rules, whether it's with respect to minimum balance or whether it's actual deposits and withdrawals at a bank branch or even ATM usage, is it largely to push people away from cash and incentivize digital, or is it largely a function of the banker's own cost and margins?
It is more driven by our own cost, and if I were to tell you the simple economics, when somebody keeps 1,000 rupees in his savings bank account, in the best case scenario, it earns 40 rupees in a year. As against this, if I allow 5 transactions free, my outgo is 75 rupees plus service tax, right?
So your cost dynamics simply don't allow too many free transactions like we enjoyed in the good old days.
Exactly, and the costs are going up. And the other thing is that savings bank, particularly because this is the product where the maximum discussion is happening, it is a product where bank is paying 4% interest. And on current accounts, we pay 0% interest. On fixed deposits, we pay 7% interest. So what are the product features for a savings bank? That you maintain the liquidity because you have the freedom to withdraw. At the same time, you earn 4%. So it is also a question of product positioning, and apart from that, maintaining superfluous accounts where are no transactions, no balance in the account, it puts huge pressure on the IT infrastructure of the bank.
Sir, but let's focus a bit on your urban and metro customers primarily now. Can we expect any further changes, particularly in things like NEFT, RTGS? As I look at the SBI release, the current, charges, range between 2 rupees to 45 rupees at the higher end. That's for NEFT, RTGS transactions. Are you proposing to bring about any changes, any increase here?
Right. So the charges normally we review once in a year. And unless there is some change in the regulation or there are some other factors where we need to tweak in further, but normally our policy is that we leave them at least for 1 year unchanged. So I don't think that there is any immediate plan to make any further changes. And as far as the card is concerned, yes, again, the cost of issuance of the card is very high, including the charges which we pay for dispatch, and again, the cost of cyber security, data security, compliance, time-to-time regulatory guidelines. Like all cards now, it has been mandated that they have to be chip and pin. So we have to replace 27 crore cards. So it costs again huge amount of money. So there is nothing free. If I get free and I charge you, then yes, I am to be blamed. But if I'm incurring costs...
Sir, you've put up a strong argument. You've put up a really strong argument, and I take that. But, we'll get MasterCard to respond to this. When it comes to cost with respect to cards and really who can bear that cost, will there be a point sometime this year when customers will have to start paying up a little more? That's exactly what we'll talk about after this break. Welcome back. You're watching Money, Money, Money. And this week we're talking about the cost of transacting. Now, just before we hit that break, Mr. Kumar from State Bank of India was making the point that it's not easy being a banker because there are costs involved every time they're issuing a debit card. So let me ask you, Amitabh, for consumers and customers, largely speaking, this MDR, this merchant discount rate, it was waived off during demonetization. It's come back now. I believe the policy itself is under review. The RBI has put out a sort of a draft discussion paper. What are we looking at in this financial year?
So you're absolutely right, Surabhi. It was waived off, and networks, banks, issuers, acquirers, everyone stepped up, and all charges were waived off for all transactions for the period 24th November till the 31st of December. After which RBI released a guideline for reduced MDR from what existed before demonetization. Also, in the month of February, RBI released draft guidelines for the MDR structure, which is going to be put in place from 1st of April.
Before you continue with this, actually, let me ask you for clarity on this. As a consumer, many of my transactions actually are free, but there are transactions, particularly with respect to credit cards, for instance, at fuel stations, where I am charged a certain fee, a surcharge, a levy, call it what you want. So which are these cases where a consumer is paying, and which are primarily the cases where the merchant is paying?
So in most cases, it's the merchant who pays. There are a few cases, and mostly these are cases of regulated price mechanism, where the price is kind of fixed or regulated or controlled. So for those transactions, the customer pays a convenience fee. Okay. Right. For credit card transactions, you may still have to pay a nominal charge, but that will be significantly lower than the 2.5% you used to pay earlier.
And how much lower respectively?
It probably will be 1% now.
A 1% charge.
Right.
And how do you see these charges shaping up as this RBI discussion paper sort of moves through industry segments this year?
Our expectation is that it will probably be along the lines mentioned in the draft, but I really would not like to hazard a guess. The whole objective is to make small ticket transactions and everyday use transactions easy to use, easy to accept for the merchants by bringing the cost down. But we must also keep in mind the value that cards provide or electronic payments provide both to consumers and merchants. So you get convenience, you get safety, security. It is multiple times safer than, let's say, a cash transaction. Right? You also have better control over your finances. When it comes to merchants, the value they derive out of electronic payments is absolutely well established. The transaction ticket for electronic payments has been proven study after study to be 2.5 to 3 times more than cash transactions. Also, it's far safer for the merchant, because if you do cash transactions, you have to worry about managing that cash. You have to worry about catching counterfeit. Sure. You have to worry about theft and losses. All of that you don't have to worry about when it comes to electronic payments. What's more, you also build some sort of a track record for yourself, which can probably get you a loan to build your business more.
Absolutely. So let's just talk about where we stand with respect to global standards. You said, for instance, for credit cards, in most cases, that fee should now come down to just about 1%.
In case of debit cards?
In case of credit cards.
So I was talking about fuel transactions.
Fee. Yeah.
The MDR that merchants pay for credit card transactions is a bit higher. But the reason for that, like Mr. Kumar was also mentioning, is because the operations for credit cards is rather expensive. I mean, you have to do a credit underwriting, you have to do verification of the customers, a whole lot of costs which are involved.
Are we at a global benchmark with respect to credit card charges?
Pretty much we are.
Okay. And what about debit cards in that case? And how do you expect these charges
even
to
in
move
debit cards?
In debit?
We are very, very competitive.
So, gentlemen, coming down to last thoughts, and I'll keep this last question the most simple one of them all. Mr. Kumar, do consumers have to gear up to pay more for the services they're getting at the bank this year?
Not really. It should not be viewed like this. As I mentioned to you, it is a competitive market. I would not like to lose my competitive advantage. So whenever we will do a pricing of any product, whether it is the determination of interest rate or whether it is the determination of the service charges, whether you believe it or not, but it will always be the customer interest which we will keep in mind. And we are very much concerned about our customers. That is a fact. The idea about any product like a savings bank, as I mentioned, to encourage savings as well as provide liquidity, provide certain number of free transactions also. Not that we have said that no free transactions are permitted, but beyond that, then if you want to do an excessive use or their accounts are superfluous or no value to the bank, then I think bank is entitled to have a look at and on the considerations of costs and cost alone. The charges will be made.
I think you used a very important word out there, sir, superfluous, and I think that's the takeaway for viewers, that if you're going to be superfluous about the way you bank with your banker, then get ready to pay up. I guess that's you know, the bottom line. Amitabh, your final thoughts from the card industry side. What can we expect this year, whether it's charges or otherwise the products, how you expect this financial year to be?
So like I mentioned, customers anyways don't pay for most of the transactions. It's the merchants who do. And for the few transactions that the customers have been paying, some of those also now they will not need to pay any longer. So my thought would be that customers should take out their cards and use them in place of cash. It helps not just them but also the economy and the society at large, because cash is probably the root of a lot of ills. To the merchants, I would say that the money that they are investing towards accepting cards, a lot of it goes towards maintaining a state-of-the-art infrastructure, creating innovation, providing a service, providing a technology which is safe and secure. You'll be surprised to know that there are more than 11,000 fraud attacks on our systems every day, all over the world, right? But for 65 years plus, our systems have never been breached. So that requires investment, that requires constant upgradation. Somebody else is looking after your safety. All of that requires the customers and the merchants, as the case may be, mostly in this case, to make payments which go towards growing the industry. So I would say that we should adopt as a country electronic payments.
All right, Amitabh and Mr. Kumar, thank you so much for joining us on this special. That's it on this week's episode of Money, Money, Money. We'll see you again next week.